Hello and welcome to our Emerging Leaders 15th Anniversary Panel. My name is Ryan Batley and I'm the current chair of our Emerging Leaders Committee. I'm excited to welcome you all as we are going to hear some great stories and insights from our past Emerging Leaders chairs. A big thank you goes out to our 2023-2024 Emerging Leaders sponsors who helped make this event possible. Please recognize those businesses shown. Thank you to everyone who pre-submitted questions for our panelists. You'll have a chance to ask questions throughout our program, or feel free to add questions to the chat. United Way Fox Cities offers the opportunity for like-minded leaders to create lasting change in our community and to make a meaningful impact through our donor networks like Emerging Leaders and Link. Members of these donor networks can give back with their time, talent, and treasure. These donor networks are a way for United Way Fox Cities to recognize individuals who give personal gifts of either $500 per year for Emerging Leaders or $250 per year for Link. Emerging Leaders offers people a chance to make an impact through events such as today's panel discussion, where you can bring back what you've learned to your company and team. Volunteering at our Spring into Summer Festival, formerly our Valentine's Family Festival, which will support summer learning and free access to books for all. Emerging Leaders also sponsors Born Learning Trails, which are located throughout parks in the Fox Cities that help parents engage with their children through active play. There are networking opportunities at all of our events and personal and professional development events like the Real Colors and Taking Care of You training. These events are open to all current Emerging Leaders as well as those interested in joining Emerging Leaders. If you are not already an Emerging Leader and are interested in learning more about this group, please scan the QR code at the end of this presentation for more information. If planning events like those mentioned sounds like your thing, we'd love to have you join our committee. Please contact Megan Sherwood at United Way Fox Cities for more information. We'll share her information in the chat. If today is your first look at Emerging Leaders and you'd like to learn more, join us at an upcoming event. We try to have something planned each month. You can also follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn for event dates and times. Please save the date for our May event, the EL Spring into Summer Festival. This is going to be our biggest family festival yet. The fun, free family event will focus on learning all summer long with lots of games to be played. We hope to see you and your families there on Saturday, May 20th. If you can't attend that event, there are many other opportunities throughout the year. Now I'd like to introduce Via Lauren Jones, Vice Chair of our Emerging Leaders Committee, as she'll be monitoring today's panel.
Hello and welcome to our Emerging Leaders panel. My name is Via Lauren Jones, just like Ryan said, and I am the Vice Chair of our EL Committee. In my day job, I work for ThedaCare as a social determinants of health lead and as the alderperson for District 10 for the City of Appleton. I have personally been with United Way's Emerging Leaders Committee for 6 years now and have had the honor of working with many of these past chairs. So we're going to do some housekeeping first. First of all, everyone will be on mute during the presentation. We've got your back. Don't worry about dogs barking or those coworkers coming to chat with you. You are all set. Second, this live stream is being recorded, so you are able to bring this back to your office, to a friend, or you know what, you just found so much poignant information that you can go back and watch it again. Third, this is for you. This is for all of us. This is interactive, so please drop comments or questions into the chat. You can talk about how great Dustin looks. Whatever you want to do, drop it into the chat for us. So let's go ahead and introduce our panelists for today. Well, welcome, Dustin. How about you say your name, where you're from, and when you were an Emerging Leader Chair.
All right, well, thank you. So I'm Dustin McClone. My day job is I'm President and CEO of McClone Insurance. Been part of Emerging Leaders now for 15 years. I was the chair from 2008 to 2012. So.
I am Sarah Bell. I am the Vice President of Education, Development, and Outcomes at Goodwill NCW. I have been involved in United Way for about 12 years, and I was the Emerging Leaders Chair from 2012 to 2016.
Wonderful. And most recent, Brenton.
Thank you, Sarah. Brenton Teeling, Vice President of Client Services and Administration at Legacy Private Trust Company in Neenah. And I have been a part of the Emerging Leaders Committee for 12 or 13 years, and as you mentioned, the immediate past chair from 2020 to 2023.
Wonderful. Going back.
Laura Marunk. I'm a shareholder with Godfrey & Kahn. I've been involved for about the same time frame as our friends in the front row. I was Emerging Leaders Chair from 2016 to 2018.
I'm Nicole Murtis with Wider Group, VP of Sales and Marketing. I've been involved with Emerging Leaders since 2012 and was chair from 2018 to 2020.
Wonderful. I am so excited at all this knowledge and experience that we have here, so please don't screw it up. So we'll go ahead with question number 1. Ooh, we're starting off with Dustin. So Dustin, what event or person had the most impact on you wanting to become an Emerging Leader Chair versus just a volunteer? But this question's a little misleading because you were part of the starting group.
Yeah,
right?
I didn't have
Okay.
a choice. I didn't have a choice. is
Tends
really
to be,
what it comes down.
tends to be, yep.
Yeah, so I think one of the most poignant events, I guess, is so I had just moved back to the Fox Valley, and I was actually at a United Way event. I was probably 24, 25 years old at the time, and I remember walking into the room, and I was probably 20 years younger than everyone else in the room, and it was at that moment where I started thinking about, well, what happens for the next generation, and from there, I had an incredible conversation with Peter Kelly, who was running United Way at the time, and just kind of talked about what might we be able to do, and from there, got 8 to 10 people together and kind of painted the picture of what maybe we could try out and see if it worked, and it really blossomed from there. So I didn't really get to choose to be chair. I don't know if it was the short straw or I just was the one standing in the corner or whatever, but
There's
it was
a lot
fun.
of being voluntold when it comes to the ELs.
For
Is
sure.
that fair to say?
For sure.
Wonderful. Well, does anyone else have any other thoughts on why it was important for you to be an EL chair as opposed to just a volunteer? Brenton, why don't you go ahead and answer?
Well, as all of us have said at the beginning, we were longtime volunteers and committee members, and I think just the opportunity to work with the group of people that we all did, it's just a natural opportunity to step into that position and represent a really great group of people.
Wonderful. Well, that is wonderful. Also, you talk about starting the group. So we now have, 15 years of Emerging Leaders, and we have a link group now for the younger generation. So you guys have really laid a wonderful foundation. Our next question is going to Nicole. So if you want to pass the mic to her, why did you initially choose to get involved with Emerging Leaders?
I was maybe recruited or voluntold as well. I was introduced to Emerging Leaders from a United Way staff member that was a friend. And I checked out the Valentine's Family Festival at the time. And at that event, I saw everyone working there just having a lot of fun. And you could tell they were friends, working together. It was a great group. I joined a meeting to check it out, and the rest is history.
So I'm going to have you pass the mic to Laura. Laura, you had said earlier, you've been a part of United Way since high school.
I was part of the high school group for United Way. I got involved when I originally lived in the community as a high school student at Appleton North, was quite involved with the high school group, and then left for college and, went off in other things. And when I came back, to be honest, I hadn't gotten involved right away, but I had a couple connections still, and they reached out, and I thought, this is a great way of even being from the community, reconnecting and meeting new people in the community.
Wonderful. Love it. All right, so we're going to Sarah next. Brace yourself, Sarah. Here we go. What have you learned through Emerging Leaders that has guided you in either your personal or professional life?
I would say Emerging Leaders really reinforced for me maybe the idea of saying yes when an opportunity presents.
Kind of that
a
yes
theme.
and. Yeah.
Right. Well, and so how I actually got involved is a little bit funny. So at the time, my employer was looking to increase the number of individuals that we had in Emerging Leaders, and so we were there was an effort around trying to get more people involved. And so I said that I would come to one of the meetings. I was supposed to go to one of the meetings at the organization, and I was accidentally forwarded at the meeting for the larger group. So unbeknownst to me, because I'm like, sure, this sounds awesome, I'll totally go. So I show up and I walk in, I'm trying to think of who was there, and I'm like, hi, and they're like, hi.
What are you doing
And
here?
next thing you know, I'm involved. And so I think that idea has carried me in lots of different ways over the course of my career. Sometimes it works out, Sometimes it doesn't. Even the times that it doesn't necessarily work out, that you take an opportunity and it maybe doesn't end up being a good fit, there's always a good learning in that. So I would say that's just a lesson that I think was reinforced with showing up in the wrong place and ending up with being part of such an amazing group. And it was a great pleasure to be involved.
Is
so.
that what we call the happy little accidents?
Exactly,
love?
exactly. Yes. Just always say yes, and in one way or another, it'll work out.
And I do have to take a personal note. I sat next to you during my first meeting, and you were inspirational. It was very much that, oh, that's Sarah. Sarah's been here a long time. And it was neat to have you there and to see you throughout the years. So
Thank you.
thank you for not scaring me away. That's wonderful.
I try.
Does anyone else have anything to share? What have you learned that you've either helped your personal or professional life?
So I would say, and this is for any emerging leader to take away something from, but some of my biggest learnings came from at the time they were CEO Talks, and now they're Tell Talks, where we got to hear from community leaders talk about leadership and be a little vulnerable and share their lessons along the way. And talk about the importance of giving back in the community. And through every single one of those sessions that I attended, I always took away something. We have really impressive leaders in this community, and just the opportunity to learn from them and hear from them was one of my biggest takeaways from a learning standpoint.
Having those CEO talks where CEOs from our area come in and share their story to emerging leaders is huge access that not everyone has, and the fact that we have leaders that are so involved in United Way that want to come and speak, that has also been such a huge part. Thank you for sharing that. Let's go over to Brenton. He's a little salty, as I may have skipped over him in our dry run, but
It's okay.
he's been practicing. So what is your biggest takeaway for your time with emerging leaders?
Yeah, obviously fresh off my time with emerging leaders, but I think for me the biggest takeaway is just the impact that a group of like-minded, passionate young leaders can have when we coalesce around a shared mission. And I think a good example of that is just looking at the philanthropic impact that our group has had over the years. Back in the infancy, when it was just a handful of people, we measured that impact by, thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. And now fast forward to present day, we measure that impact by hundreds of thousands of dollars, and really a meaningful part of the annual campaign that United Way has each year. But I know you asked for the biggest takeaway, but I'm going to give you a second one as well.
I'll allow it.
And it really is directly tied to the first, that it's the education piece that we receive as emerging leaders. You really have a chance to learn about the community, about community needs, and importantly, community solutions. And as an emerging leader, you're on the front lines of seeing what United Way does to drive those solutions and the part that we play in that. So I think those two things are huge takeaways.
Well, I think you just did the whole marketing plan for next year. That was wonderful. Anyone else want to share? So actually going back to kind of what you had said, I know, Sarah, you had done a lot with your United Way, getting them to volunteer with Pillars. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you served in that capacity?
Yes, so I was a kitchen lead for several years, helping to organize the breakfast opportunities through United Way Emerging Leaders, and then actually started to try to recruit more people to just help even outside of that. Actually, I still do volunteer there a couple times a month at the front desk, so that started 10-ish years ago, so even after I emerged out of emerging leaders.
You're looking at me.
I emerged out of emerging leaders and continued to be involved. So I think, kind of like Brenton is talking about, the opportunity to really see what are the things that you can do to help other people get involved, but then where do you find those passions where then you can continue to carry that forward as something that you continue to do.
Wonderful. Does anyone else have anything to add? Wonderful. So this is going to Laura, so if you want to send that back. All right, you ready? What do you think are the greatest benefits of being an emerging leader?
For me, they're twofold, and part of it is what Brenton was talking about. Having grown up in this community, I thought I knew it pretty well when I came back. And getting involved with the emerging leaders, I learned so much more. The fact that the United Way impacts 1 in 3 of our community members, our neighbors, our colleagues, just continues to blow my mind. And the breadth of services and the breadth of opportunities to impact and positively change this community is just truly awesome. The other part to me is the relationships, the connections. I've met all of these people sitting up here originally through the United Way Emerging Leaders. I'm sure we would have run across each other at one point or another in other events, but getting to know my peers at different organizations, at different companies, and different nonprofits helped me, again, learn about our community, learn what was available, and we've also had opportunities to support each other throughout our careers then as we've gone through various stages. It's wonderful to be able to walk into an event and recognize people, and I think that's one of the biggest hurdles as a young professional. How do you get comfortable in your community and your networking and knowing more people and connecting with those who have similar values, I guess, and supporting and growing their community is a great asset.
Laura, that was wonderful. I have to echo that as well. This is the only committee meeting Friday morning on at 8 a.m. that I am happy to go to, and I am there early. So
It used to be 7.
it used to.
Yeah.
I was there with bells on because this group is wonderful.
I would echo that. It was one of those that getting there at 7 a.m. on a Friday was hard, but it is and continues to be one of the only committee meetings that I walked out of truly energized and excited and passionate about what was going on. It was a bucket filler, for lack of a better term.
I love that, 100%. All right, well, Laura, that was your question. So we're gonna go to Nicole next. All right. I think we kind of started talking about this, but in your own words, what do you think sets emerging leaders apart from these other leadership groups in the community?
Well, I think there's a lot of answers to that question. I think first I'll say the United Way staff is amazing, hardworking and caring, and they always have your back. So I met a lot of friends on United Way staff, and continues to be just an excellent group of people to work with as well. For me, it was, I think, the difference right away I could tell was that this was very much a hands-on opportunity. So it wasn't just about sitting in a meeting or giving financially. There's so many ways to participate and get involved, whether that's through the volunteering, participating in a committee, planning events, executing, generating ideas. We had so many different brainstorm sessions that were always fun. Or getting out in the community, reaching out to people, meeting other organizations and the partner agencies, and just so many ways to get involved, which was very appealing to me. I wanted to feel like I was making a difference and really be an active member of emerging leaders.
To piggyback off of that and some of what you all have said, being a young professional, trying to figure out how do I meet people, how do I network, how do I get involved? Do any of you want to speak to why emerging leaders is so crucial to those people? We'll let Dustin talk.
So kind of tying the two questions together, I mean, to me, what was always interesting about this group was it was growth and impact and the overlap of the two. So from a growth perspective, you have personal growth, you get to meet a lot of people, you get to get outside your comfort zone, you get to develop as a leader. And, to me, in going, now that I am emerged, as you go through that time in your life, right, it's a time where, you're developing in your career, you might have a family, you have a lot of commitments, both, in and outside of work. And so you have to make really smart decisions as to where you're spending that time. And to me, this is the only group that I've seen where you can have both that tremendous growth, both personally and professionally, but also while doing it while making such a significant impact. So, when we talk about these committee meetings at 7 or 8 in the morning, why do you feel your bucket is filled after that? It's because it's the overlap of those two things. And I know for myself, the people that I've met, the relationships that I've built has not only challenged me, but has also been incredibly rewarding to meet people you frankly otherwise might not run into, other than kind of through this group.
Wonderful. So, oh, Brenton, go ahead.
You know, and Nicole mentioned the staff at United Way, and I wish I could attribute this to one of the campaign co-chairs many years ago, but said they felt like their donation to United Way was amplified, and that dollar was really stretched, not only by the team at United Way, but also the network of volunteers that support the organization. Emerging Leaders is just one example of a volunteer committee within United Way, and allowing us to leverage those donations through the United Way team and the volunteer network just really amplifies the effect out into the community.
That is so wonderful. Is it fair to say, admittedly being selfish, that you get so much more than what you put in with this group?
Yeah.
Yep. Wonderful. Well, we'll go back to Dustin. Dustin, can you share with me why you feel it's important to be an emerging leader? And then in addition to that, why should someone consider being a chair?
So one of the things for me in this community in particular is this community has always kind of outfought our weight class, right? And
I really like that. That
yes,
is wonderful.
Yes. But the challenge with that, the positive is that's allowed this community to thrive and flourish in a lot of different ways. The challenge with that, though, is how do you keep it going? And so I'm always reminded of, you know, the quote, you know, to much is given, much is expected. Mm-hmm. And when I think of, you know, emerging leaders and United Way and the opportunity that creates, it gives such a tremendous opportunity for people to basically step up and bring the next generation forward. Because, you know, as we speak to it, right? So for me, 15 years ago, I was new on the scene. I was an emerging leader at that point, right? And, you know, versus now, you know, it's on to the next group, right? To really take it and run and expand it and grow it and have it create much more impact. So, you know, then to move on to the chair piece, you know, I would say that, as you've kind of heard from some of us, a lot of times the chair isn't necessarily that you start in emerging leaders to become the chair. But at the same point, you know, a lot of times we underestimate the power that we hold within ourselves. And that's where a lot of the crew up here, we you know, may have been voluntold, but it's because other people saw that passion, saw that ability for us to, you know, kind of take it to that next level. So, you know, I think never underestimate what impact you can individually have. And so, as we've seen with a lot, you know, get involved, you know, join committees, you know, get passionate about it, and then see where things go from there.
Wonderful. Anyone else want to talk about why? Do you need the question reread?
No.
Okay.
So I think it's important to be an emerging leader. Partly, I very much agree with Dustin's. It's a pay it forward concept. This is a great place. It was a great place for me to grow up and come back to, and I feel that there were many in prior generations who invested a lot of time and energy to make that happen. And to Dustin's point, it's our job to step up for the next generations around here and continue that path. I also think it's just a great opportunity to go beyond your own network and your circle of people. I think of it a bit as friend raising. You know, get out and connect with people. We all have the people we run into on a daily basis at our jobs or in our, you know, path to the grocery store, picking up kids or that sort of thing. But the people that I've met continue to have an amazing impact on my life 10 years in, and will, because we are all committed to this community and to each other and to the continued growth. And so, to Dustin's point, there's only so much time in the day, and I truly feel like this is a group that you can give, you can have that philanthropic impact, you can build those relationships. It's a one-stop shop, and it's an opportunity to really drive what you want to see in the future of this community. You're not, as a young person, being told to sit back and wait until you've achieved a certain level in your career. You're being invited to step forward and say, this is what I feel passionate about, this is what makes this a great place, and I want to contribute to that day over day.
That is wonderful. Sarah, you want to go ahead?
The one thing I would add is just related to kind of the opportunity to be an emerging leaders chair, and then on the personal development side. So I think getting outside your comfort zone maybe a little bit with some of the opportunities that are presented, like maybe being on a panel or speaking at the campaign kickoff and things like that. So when I look back at my time, all of those opportunities that were part of being the chair helped me grow and develop personally and do things that I wasn't necessarily super comfortable with, but became more comfortable with over time. To the point of if someone sees something in you, how do you kind of embrace that and say, well, if you think I can do it, I'll give it my best shot. And so I just think on a personal development level, the opportunity to be involved, there's a great benefit with that as well.
Wonderful. Brenton, Nicole. So I'm going to go a little off script here and kind of build off of that. You've all been a part of Emerging Leaders for quite some years. Between 30 and 40, life changes. You are young and single, you have kids, your kids are older. Can you all take a moment to explain kind of where your life was at when you started Emerging Leaders and how committee chairs, Just a Volunteer, or EL chairs fit into your ever-changing life? Does that question make sense?
I can maybe start. So when I checked out the Valentine's Family Festival, I brought my daughter, who is much shorter than she is now, because I think that was 2012. And I've been involved ever since. It's been really cool to watch her. She's a senior in high school now. And
So she'd be
has her
mortified
own
you're talking
passions.
about her right now.
What's that?
So she'd be mortified you're talking about her right now. Okay.
I won't say her name. No. No, she has her own passions, and she's been very involved herself, and she was on the United Way Youth Board. So that was just really cool to see. People are watching you, and just really encouraging. And it's really interesting to reflect on now that she's a senior, and thinking back to when she was just a little girl at that Valentine's Family Festival.
My one comment to that would be life was chaos with or without kids and job and everything else. But it was nice to be in and amongst a group of people who were also dealing with life as chaos and providing support and advice and just a general community of people in the same kind of phase of life to a certain extent, and knowing that others have gotten through it and we will too.
That is so important to be hearing, that you will get through it.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is an evolution, because we talked about, after, as a younger emerging leader, it's the happy hour after work, or it's getting together to volunteer. But I think about, now being emerged, just the other day, my kids were talking about going to the tailgate picnic that we had in the parking lot. But it really gives you the opportunity to, they recognize that as just a get together with a party, but then it gives me the avenue to really start talking about, well, let me tell you about where we were, or why we were there, and what we were doing, and what United Way does in the community, and really gives me that opportunity to start planting those seeds, that they will in high school get involved and beyond, and really feel that it's an important part of themselves to be involved in the community and to make an impact.
So it's not just a pickleball tournament, there's more to it.
That's right.
Wonderful. Sarah.
I think, life goes so fast, right? So
True.
I'm reflecting wow, you blink and holy cow. But I think, different phases of life. But I think that's also the cool thing, is that you can be involved as you can be, depending on where you're at, right? So I know in the beginning when I got involved in Emerging Leaders, that was really one of the things that we emphasized was, if you can't make the happy hour because your kids got soccer or whatever, totally, that's okay. Maybe you can do something else. So I think the flexibility to get as involved as you're able to, depending on the phase of life that you're in. And then again, once you kind of transition out maybe of being involved in Emerging Leaders, the opportunity to carry some of those passions forward, to continue to be involved in United Way and the community just in a different way. So it's kind of as your life evolves, kind of your involvement can evolve as well.
So we've got something to fit all needs.
We do.
Dustin, did you want to comment on that? Being the eldest emerged, I feel like.
It feels like so long ago. No, I think everything that was said, I think is true. I think, a lot of times in that phase of life, we think we can't fit that next thing in. And the reality is it's not a significant time commitment, but you get so much back in return. And, we kind of alluded to it. Others are watching, right? Actually, my daughter is 16, so now we'll have another high school daughter that's upset we brought her up. But, she was asking me this morning actually just what I had today, and I mentioned this panel, and and she must know I'm emerged as well. She's like, what are you doing that for? And I'm like, well, I don't know how else to say that, but the reality is she, because of my involvement, she knows about United Way. She knows the impact that it has, and this is at a time where you don't necessarily know if your kids are listening, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's not a significant time impact, and the long-term give back that you get for those around you, it's substantial.
I think we knew that this was an opportunity to teach your children, but to hear that spoken by all of you to be helping affect that next generation is really exciting. So thank you. Let's go to Laura. How has being involved in the community opened doors for you professionally or personally? Could you share an example if you have one?
Sure, I think on both sides it has. It would build to me off of the relationship aspect of it. Professionally, having gone through Emerging Leaders and then taking on, similar to Sarah, taking on the chair when you're not really sure that you're the right fit for it or whether you have kind of that extra time to do that, but really putting yourself out there puts you in a position to connect with other community and business leaders. And one, for them just to recognize that you're involved and you're out there and doing that. My participation with the Emerging Leaders also, I'd say, gave me some legitimacy as I had gone off of Emerging Leaders, having spent that time letting other people take over, other organizations saying, oh, you were involved with Emerging Leaders. We'd like to understand how young professionals or the next generation might be interested in helping that. And so, I'm now involved with the Community Foundation Board and helping to bring, with Brenton and others, that kind of next generation perspective. And having come through the United Way Emerging Leaders, I think other organizations see that as a real asset to having that perspective and that experience. So that's the professional side of it. And then personally, again, just the relationships and the opportunity to get involved with organizations at a younger-ish age than maybe I otherwise would have had I lived in Chicago or Minneapolis or otherwise, where you have to really climb the ranks before you're seen as a legitimate board member or contributor to these organizations. It has just been powerful because I'm able to take my passions for the community and giving back to it and really make the strategic as well as impactful actions now and know that I have years ahead of me as well. So I mean, having been involved gives you, again, the credibility amongst others to say, this person is committed and willing to get involved and we'd like to have them on our team as well and other opportunities.
You mentioned Brenton along on that board with you. Any others want to share about any other experiences thanks to United Way in part?
So to me, I think one of the other things that this has done is it gives you exposure to so many other organizations that United Way is helping. So, I think a lot of times, I refer to this area sometimes as sheltered valley, right? Where, it's very easy to live your day, day in and day out and not really see, the issues that people are facing here in our community. And we know, 1 in 3 people are impacted by the United Way and the programs that it supports. But a lot of these programs are not heavily advertised, right? Mm-hmm. So they don't have their own marketing arm, and United Way is really there to find those programs, support those programs, and make sure that they're driving towards the outcomes. Which I don't know that prior to getting as involved as I have been, that I knew really the process that United Way went through, and the wide-ranging impact that it had on so many other nonprofits in the area. And on top of that, then you become more aware of certain things that are going on in the community that you just may never have seen in your own life, and suddenly your eyes are open to, wow, this is an issue here, and maybe a few blocks down from my house. So to me, that kind of lens, I think, really changed by being involved in the United Way.
Wonderful. And to follow up on that, once you are emerged from your chair position, you will have the opportunity to sit on the United Way board. Is that correct? Brenton, as you just recently went through that transition, tell me what it's like to have opportunity to serve on the board of directors for United Way.
Yeah, I think it gives you even further view of what the organization does. But I think it's also important for emerging leaders to see that next step in the impact that we can have. Dustin just coming off as the board chair, and others of us that are recently on the board. At the last emerging leaders meeting, I told everybody, you now have the biggest cheerleader, along with several others as well, on the board for really how important emerging leaders is to the organization. But again, it's part of that evolution, right? And the recognition, that coming through the program, we really have a lot to offer, and we can continue to push the organization forward.
Wonderful. Any other follow-up? All right, so we're going to go ahead, and Brenton, you're just going to hold on to that mic right
Perfect.
there. What, just stepping off, still having hopes and dreams, you're sitting on the board so you can tell us what to do. What do you hope emerging leaders keep doing, and what do you hope they do even better moving forward from a community perspective?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because over the last 15 years now, there's a lot that we really do well, and I hope that the group continues to come together, continues to connect with each other, connect with community leaders, like events through Tel Talks and other community events. I hope we continue really that shared sense of community impact, and then several have also mentioned it, but in the Fox Cities, we really enjoy a rich tradition of philanthropy, and it doesn't just happen by accident. I mean, Dustin mentioned, we really need to foster that with the next generation to continue that forward, and I hope that remains, and I know it will, a huge piece of what emerging leaders continues to do. I think to do better, I think we continue to grow the connections out into the community and even grow the community engagement, so we can really establish a reputation as the premier young leaders group. And again, I think from an organizational perspective, that emerging leaders is really a taking off point or a beginning for what is a lifelong commitment to a great organization and a dedication to making a positive impact in the community.
So once you sign up, you can never leave.
That's
Is
exactly
that kind
right.
of your
Yes,
message?
yeah, exactly.
I love that this has been so important for you all and that it carries on through generations and your own future. Does anyone want to follow up with what you hope to see ELs want to do in the future? Dustin.
So one of the underpinnings of all this has been fun. We see it, even more so when we're off air, but, I think, we can talk about impact, we can talk about growth, but I think, life has its ups and downs and its turns, and to be part of a group that you can come back to that is fun and you have real relationships, and Brenton kind of mentioned it earlier. It's like-minded, passionate people. To me, that's invaluable.
Wonderful. Anyone else? I do have to say now, when I go to events and I see people that I know, I'll get the third-party person who says, "Well, how did you two meet?" And more often than not, we go, "Oh, emerging leaders. Oh, United Way." So absolutely, those relationships are huge. Wonderful. Well, we'll keep working on that as we go forward. Sarah, the mic is going to go to you next. Here's kind of a little specific. How has being involved in the community changed your mindset about a particular topic or cause?
That's a good question as well. I don't know if it necessarily changed my mindset, but I would say opened my eyes, right? So similar to maybe what we've heard. So I think I thought I knew, right? I think everyone thinks that they know, about their community, but then having the opportunity to really really understand what the needs are in the community, but then also have the opportunity to be part of making a meaningful difference in improving those things. So, you know, being a nurse by background, even related to like social determinants of health, which I know we are like totally there on
Could
that.
talk for
but,
hours on
you know,
that.
so starting to make those connections between the stability of an individual and their physical and mental health, and you know how the whole economic framework is structured around that. So it's very complex, but it gives you a really interesting perspective, as well as, like I said, you know, instead of being like, gosh, I just wish there was something I could do, there is something, you know, that you can do. So I think, and then also carrying on, continuing to be involved, you know, kind of taking that to the next level of getting involved in the impact groups that are helping to look at, you know, the partner agencies that are receiving funding. And so there's that whole layer too to understand. So I think that's been the best way to, I guess, understand the needs in a different way.
You can follow up on this one or anyone else. Has there been a nonprofit partner agency that you either didn't know existed or you thought you knew what they did and you learned more by being a part of United Way?
It's probably learned a lot. I mean, I'm like trying to think of just one. Yeah, there's so many needs, right? Yeah.
I don't know if this is necessarily just a single, but the PATH program around mental health. Like when I think back to when, I mean, United Way blazed that path. You know, today mental health is talked about in a.
Take a quick minute, really briefly explain what PATH is if anyone doesn't know.
Yeah, so the PATH program, basically there was an identification that, you know, kids basically didn't have access to mental health counseling, and so there were you know, a lot of tragic things happening because of that, and it was because there were a lot of independent organizations that weren't necessarily working together and pulling together. And so United Way started started in one school district, trialed it out to try to see what impact it would have, and it had tremendous impact and incredible outcomes. And so now it's expanded to all schools basically in the Valley. And you know but at the time, you know, mental health wasn't really talked about a lot at that point. And it really started with United Way identifying that, you know, again, not just that mental health issues existed, but why were they not getting addressed? And it was because of access. And so many things have come from that. And, you know, you look at it today, access, you know, still is not perfect, but it's at such a different level. And it's because now the organizations that are in that space are working together, they're communicating, and that United Way has really been the glue that's pulled that together. So it's not necessarily a single organization, but almost an entire issue, you know, over time that, you know, now today is a little bit more aware, but you know, 10, 12 years ago when PATH started, it certainly wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Anyone else want to share an organization? Or I play teacher and pick one of you? I wouldn't do that. Wonderful. Well, we're going to start with Dustin, so you can hold on to the mic. Everyone's going to answer this one. Why do you choose to continue to live united?
So I kind of alluded to this. I mean, I think to much is given, much, you know, is expected. And I think, you know, to continue to live united,
Well, thank you for holding on during those technical difficulties. As you can imagine with this fun group here, we have a lot of explanations as to what could have happened, but we're going to let your imagination run wild. So we're going to go back to Dustin, and then everyone else is going to answer, why do you choose to continue to live united? And yes, you do need to start over.
That's okay. I figured I was just getting censored, so that's fine. So, to me, as I mentioned before, to much is given, much is expected. And to me, the reason I continue to live united is, one, because I want to pay it forward, and I've gotten so much from this organization. I want to continue to pay it forward. But also, frankly, I think there's no better investment into our community than United Way. Brenton kind of referenced the amplification of your dollars. It's really hard in any other way to identify what are root causes that are unique to this community and get those dollars to deploy to programs that can actually impact it.
Wonderful. Sarah, why do you continue to live united?
Really to make a difference, right? Like at the end of the day, I think each of us really wants to make a difference in whatever way that we can. And kind of on the maybe selfish side, I want to be a good role model for my kids, and to like we talked about, right? Like how do you show your kids what it means to be part of a community? And I think that's a great way to do it.
Thank you. Brenton.
You've heard how long each of us has been involved, and you don't stay involved in an organization for that long unless you have connection and confidence in what the organization is doing. So I think for all of us to know the impact we've had over the past 10, 12, 15 years, we want to continue to do that.
Wonderful. Laura.
Those were all really great answers. I'm going to just say, can I say ditto for that?
We talked about that. You can't just say ditto.
I can't just say ditto. But I do agree. For me personally, from my giving standpoint, it's a way of amplifying. I know the processes that the volunteers go through, the work that the United Way does, not just to fund an agency or a program, but to fund programs and agencies that they believe are getting upstream to address some of the systematic issues, and hopefully make a great impact doing that. And I want everyone in this community to have access to the great standard of living that I feel like I grew up with, and we're not there yet, but I think each of these programs and agencies are making strides to getting there, and I feel very strongly about the equity of everyone who grows up here should have the same opportunities, and I want to be involved with an organization that is fighting that fight every day.
And this is the third time I've gotten goosebumps. All right, Nicole, go ahead.
I know this is really hard to follow, all of you. Why am I last? I guess I would just great answers. Really, to do my part, I would say, would be my answer. I go back to the 1 in 3 people that are impacted by United Way. And when I think about that, I think about how sometimes you're the helper and sometimes you need to be helped, right? Throughout your life journey, there's different stages and just the people as well. I think it takes a community to come together and to know that there's support there for you and for others, for everyone. And we all just need to do our part when we can. And that looks different, right? It looks different at different stages in your life, but that's what makes a community great, so.
I am overwhelmed and exhausted. So we are now going to kick it to Ellen. So Ellen has been monitoring the chat for your comments and questions. Before we have Ellen ask the first question, I want to know, Ellen, was there any comments on how great Dustin looks? Did we see any of those?
All of them.
Okay, good. So hopefully we find some questions in there.
Yes.
Ellen, go ahead and read one of the questions from our viewers.
Awesome, will do. It has been a lively chat and it's super exciting. My favorite question that was asked was from Benny, all the way in Minneapolis.
Oh, Benny.
Yeah. For panelists, yeah. So I'm sure she's watching. I'll tell you if she says hi back. For panelists, so all of you, what EL experience gave you the best or the most laughs?
What experience gave you the best or the most laughs? Sarah's got it.
The Born Learning Trails, like, were always super fun.
Real quick, what are the Born Learning?
Okay, so the Born Learning Trails are at the community parks, and it helps to encourage family involvement and reading and literacy. So different signs with different activities, and it's meant to be a fun family activity. So we did several of them when I was involved in Emerging Leaders, and it was always just a fun, like, Saturday afternoon, and we would get together, super casual, have nice lunch from Ryan Batley would kind of support that, and his organization. So we always had a blast doing the Born Learning Trails.
Wonderful. Laura?
I will honestly say it was the committee meetings. I have never laughed so much in a meeting before. I mean, between the support, the good-natured ribbings, just the crazy fun things that I thought were crazy ideas that we actually made happen. Like, it was so much fun, and I have never laughed so much in meetings before. So again, get involved
at a 7
because
a.m. meeting.
at a 7 a.m. on a Friday morning. So I just continued to be amazed week over week. Like, these are really fun, interesting, smart, passionate people, and it's just been fun.
Wonderful. All right.
Got another one for you.
Alan.
What should young professionals be most excited about when they join Emerging Leaders?
What should young professionals be most excited about when they join Emerging Leaders? Well, now that you're gone, all the excitement's gone.
That is quite true, I'm sure. We've alluded to it before, but it is a choose your own adventure. You can be as involved as you're able at a different time, but the menu of offerings, whether it's the TEL Talks, whether it's the volunteer events, we've started to do a lot of other hands-on combined with the social time. So I think just the opportunity to pick what appeals to you and what you're able to do at the time, and knowing there's a great group of people that are there setting those events and having a lot of fun while they do it.
You also set it up for the 15th year. There is an event every single month this year, so there's no reason to not get involved.
The only addition to what Brenton said is the opportunity to create those events, decide what we should be doing going forward. I mean, that's one of the greatest gifts of Emerging Leaders is you're not sitting there listening. You're expected to show up and say, what do you want this to be? And let's drive it there. And so not just picking off of a menu, but what are we missing? What should we be doing? What does the next generation want us to do? And really drive that bus. Anybody else?
All right. Ellen,
I got
we're
more.
back to you.
Now, Sarah, I know this one was kind of directed to you earlier in the chat with Via, but does anybody else have other thoughts? The question was, tell me about how being an Emerging Leader Chair has assisted in your career and personal growth.
So how has this opportunity affected your career or personal growth?
Speak to that. So, for me, if I kind of take each step, certainly starting as the board chair for Emerging Leaders to, eventually becoming the board chair of the United Way, to me, each step of the way was so much learning. And then from a career perspective, by the time I was, running McClone, I was used to leading teams in a lot of ways because of a lot of the things that I had learned as being part of Emerging Leaders. And, some of it was just getting uncomfortable, or getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? Of sitting in front of a room of your peers, with them looking at you saying, all right, well, what are we going to do next, right? Like, that was a tremendous learning. But also, we're all in different organizations that have different leadership development and different ways of, getting things done and project management and things like that you get access to, right? To say, oh, well, you brought this way of bringing this event to life. I've never seen something like that. Tell me about it, learn about it, and kind of take it offline. So, within United Way, it's been a tremendous learning experience. But then the translation to that to my day job has been significant.
Wonderful. Brenton.
Well, and I'll just add, there's nothing better than being the chair of a committee full of A-listers, right? We've talked about the opportunity to work with such great people, and it is a lot easier to lead a team when you have a team of leaders. And it's given I think in the chair role too, just the opportunity to go out and speak and be a spokesperson for not only emerging leaders in United Way, and it's a great opportunity to do so.
Well, we're going to go to one last question with Ellen. It's all we have time for.
Sounds good. How about we had someone interested if there are any CEO or TEL Talks that have stood out or advice you found beneficial from them?
Any ones that have stood out specifically?
All of
All of
them.
them. I do have to say the Galloway TEL Talk that had the cow that could be milked. I know that was a favorite. Did you put your hand up?
Yeah, I'll
Yep,
go
Dustin.
The one I always go back to actually was the first one, which was Mark Richards, who was leading Appleton Papers at the time, and it was at the Appleton Papers farmhouse. And what was most amazing about that was, at that point, Emerging Leaders was like 12 people, and we had just over 30 people show up to this thing. And there are two things that I took from that. One, I don't know how we got 30 people to show up, but then two, the openness that Mark had, it really set the tone for so many of those going forward, because he was completely open about his career, his development, where philanthropy fit in, challenges he had that we could all learn from, what he would do if he was in our shoes. And, he really set the tone in a lot of ways for so many leaders to come.
Wonderful. Any others?
Yeah, it's just that tone aspect, hearing other business and community leaders be vulnerable about where they feel like they succeeded, where they wish they would have, things they would have known. It just reminds all of us that they didn't just wake up one day in that role. There was a lot of time and effort and support from colleagues and otherwise, and it's reassuring to know that they were once on the path that many of us are on at this point, and know that, again, you're not alone in what you're doing, and great things are to come. Just keep going. And I think that's the tone that Dustin was talking about, and that we've heard echoed throughout many, if not all of them, is just keep swimming to a certain extent.
That is a huge point of being vulnerable, having access. And I want you to know that we're now over 200 people coming. So thank you for setting the bar with 30. That's really impressive. Well, this kills me to end this, but I feel like I could talk with you all forever, and we should probably hang out sometime. But want to do another reminder of our upcoming events. Again, spring into summer is coming. It is amazing. I hope to see you there. There's a pickleball tournament. There's a ton of things. Amazing. Again, thank you. I still have goosebumps. Thank you for your words and your commitment to this community, to this organization, and future generations. And then thanks to all of you for joining us today, because there's no reason to hear him talk if there's no one going to show up, right? Okay, anyway. So thank you so much for coming. Do not forget to find us on social media. Come and join us for events. I hope to personally see you there. And otherwise, have a great day.